My average monthly upload schedule looks like the following. Start of the month, new zero set, therefore lots of zero content. End of the month, end of a zero set, therefore have to wrap up all the content and do all the stuff that I didn't have time to do during the month. Everything else in between, I don't know. Welcome folks, it's time for another Tuesday stream sort of wrap up. It's mostly collabs and a lot of it is Token Rambo, and when I edit these videos and do the little card pop up here, it's a pain in the ass because it takes a long time, and if it's not something that is coming to English for the time being, because we don't know if these collabs are coming to English at all, and you know there's like two scenarios. It comes to English in 2022 just like Bang Dream came almost a year later, or it never comes to English, just like that one Token Rambo set, I guess. Yeah, that one Token Rambo set. And so today we're gonna wrap up through the Token Rambo cards real quick. They're gonna pop up here on the side, and I will tell you the text because I think that will make this editing much easier, and I can work on other videos that I want to work on. But there are things that I really want to talk about from this week's thing because I see them discussed in the community a lot, and so therefore I am making this video. Also, if you have yet to pick up your overdress cards, Parkage now does nation splits for the DBTO1 card. So if you need to pick up whether it's your Dark State stuff or Dragon Empire stuff or whatever, they have nation splits. What a nation split is you choose a nation, so like let's say Dark States, and get 4 of every single card, and then you actually get 2 over triggers because there's 2 different decks within those, you know, those splits. So you basically get, you know, 1 over trigger each for each of the different decks. So if you haven't already, use discount code DifferentFight for 5% discount at checkout, and that supports the channel quite a lot. On top of that, this month's channel members, those that can participate in my like all monthly tournaments, I guess, for each format and get all kinds of other benefits. These are Crowned Clown, Barry Flores, Platinum Wolf 2009, Christian, Kyra's Darkblade, Carrier Barger, Arcana Master, Tristan H, Jan Fish, Martinich 67, Cardinal Joker, Michael Lockett, Lindo 1332, The Real ZBD, Rika, Creeper 66, and Bradley Dyson. So once again, thank you very much for another month of support. You know, your guys' support, whether it's on Twitch or on YouTube, definitely helps my channel keep going in general. You know, it helps me afford the things I need to do for this channel especially, and so I'm always very, very thankful. Anyway, let's speedrun. So first things first, we have Kosetsu Samonji. So this guy is a grade 2, also a double rare. When he's put on Guardian Circle, you can discard 1 to give him plus 10k shield, so you can basically guard with a 5k, discard a 5k or a 0 shield card to make it a 15. I like defensive options. Whether this will be played, I don't know, never played Token Rambo. Then we have Tonbokiri. This guy always looked cool to me. I always liked how, you know, manly he looks. Regard Circle continuous. During your turn, he gets plus 2k powers. He's a 15k attacker, so we've seen Bastion make 15 attackers be very relevant. And when he's rest for cards cost, you can stand him. So we saw an effect last week that basically had to rest your stuff to gain power, and so basically he's the best friend for that card because he stands himself instantly, so you don't lose out on an attack and you don't have to overcall it to get an attack. Here we have Monoyoshi Sadamune. So back row Regard Circle continuous, he receives double the power from triggers. So it's interesting, you can split effects by putting crit or something to front, but then, you know, giving extra effects to the back, I guess, or the power effect to the back. I guess with front triggers, this literally does not work, so I guess you won't be playing front triggers when you play this card. So it's interesting. It's also 7k power, so I guess that's part of why that is. Then we have Hyuga Masamune. When placed in Regard Circle, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, look at the top card of your deck, put it on top or bottom, and it's basically a Magus effect. So seems fine, seems okay. I don't recognize these cards from the past Token Rambo set, so they must be new dudes. Then we have Izumi no Kami Kanesada. So this card is pretty common, and he like, I remember this guy in particular. He says when he attacks while boosted, cost 1, he gets plus 5k power until end of battle, and if he's boosted by Horikawa Kunihiro, then he, for that battle, makes it so that, you know, it's a battle door effect, so your opponent has to guard with 2 cards at the same time when guarding his attack, and so that's pretty good. So Horikawa Kunihiro says Regard Circle, when he boosts a Token Danchi Uchigatana, then you can soul plus 1, discard 1 to draw a card, and if it boosted Izumi no Kami Kanesada, then he gets power plus 5k until end of turn. So the Token Danshi Uchigatana is like their like race, and then he specifies the name there as well. So I think they're like a duo in the game or whatever. They always have effects that support each other. Always as a grade 1 as a grade 2. So yeah, they're just staying consistent with that. Seems pretty good though, because you get a filter, you get power. So this is basically like what, a 15k attacker with Battle Door plus it turns to 23, so 28 cycle and Battle Door is actually not too bad. Like, I think this will be a staple in a lot of these token decks because just it's asking for 20k guard, and so although generally in overdress 20k guard is always 2 cards, so I guess that let's see how effective that will be actually. Then this dude looks pretty new as well, Okanyahira. He reminds me of someone, I'm not sure what, maybe like it's either a Gundam character or like a King of Fighters character. So rearguard circle when he attacks while not boosted, you can discard 2 to choose one of your units with higher power than this unit, and until end of battle his power becomes 5k higher than that unit's. This is a pretty original effect, and I quite like how I don't think we've ever had this kind of like phrasing in effect where it's like you have to choose something with higher power and increase his by that +5, right? Or like his power becomes that +5, so it just literally goes like 1 extra card guard beyond. So if your Vanguard's like super huge, like 40k or something, like in that deck that raises its own power, like the DP lookalike one, then I guess this would be a pretty good card, because discard 2 is pretty heavy though, right? Discard 2 is pretty nasty, so we'll see if that is played in the end or not, but it is a double rare, so maybe. Then we have Uguisumaru. I do remember this guy. When played some rearguard circle from hand, kill almost 1, look at top 7 to search your deck, search among from the 7 for a Okanyahira, reveal it, add it to your hand, and shuffle your deck, and if you did not reveal a card, counter charge 1, so it makes up for the cost. I mean, these top 7 searches are very V-series. I feel like we don't really have a lot of like top 7 searching in overdress yet, so I mean, I guess it's fine. It searches for 1 card only specifically, which is kind of, I guess, whatever, right? So it doesn't like search for 2 different cards in the deck, it searches for just 1, so the chance of it missing might actually be pretty high. But I mean, search is always nice, they add consistency, so why not, right? And then we have the one that's being called Worse Eugene, which is or Eugene 2.0, I guess. So this is the Mutsunokami Yoshiyuki. So here's a Sento form, which says when he's rode upon by the grade 2, choose one of your opponent's back row rearguards and retire it. And if not retired, soul charge 1. And then he gets plus 2k power during your turn on rearguard circles. So it's, yeah, I felt Eugene vibes from this very early on, and I guess it's funny because this is good against Bruce because it can kill the starter, so your opponent literally has to call 2 cards like they do against stuff like Verena or Prison, so that's pretty cool, I guess. The grade 2 is the Toku form, so when rode upon by the grade 3, Soul Blast 1 to choose an opponent's back row rearguard and retire it, and if it was not retired, then you draw a card. So basically, if they didn't have a back row, you use Soul Blast 1 to draw 1, which is pretty good, I guess. It's definitely like in line with other ride lines. A lot of them have like, if it's a Soul Blast, then they do +1 and stuff like that, so it's pretty good. And he also gets plus 2k on rearguard circle during your turn. And then the grade 3 is the Kiwame form, so this one says if your opponent does not have any rearguards in their back row, this unit gets power plus 2k on both players' turns. Yeah, 15k base is cool. Not sure if it's based, but it's pretty cool. And you know, your opponent has to call a back row during their turn and cancel that, so yeah. And then when he attacks, Vanguard Circle combos 1, choose an opponent's back row rearguard and retire it, and for each of your opponent's back row rearguards, he gets plus 5k for that battle. So unlike Eugene, this at least is like good, even when your opponent does not have a field, because that's Eugene's big weakness, is that he does nothing when your opponent doesn't have a field. But even then, I don't know, man, this feels a little bit lackluster compared to the ride lines they've shown so far. It felt like the one from last week in particular felt really good, the DP-like one. So yeah, Token Rambu so far seems okay, but honestly, I'm not super hyped about it. Like I said before, you can check out Hokago Card Time for more talks about Token Rambu cards. I'm personally not super invested. In general, with collabs, I'm very like hesitant because if we don't get them in English, it's kind of weird, and if we do, they come super late and are often not relevant anymore. So like you saw with Bang Dream, right? It literally came at the very end with client selection and it was just not relevant. However, we got 2 Monster Strike cards, but I think before we look at the Monster Strike cards, there's something else I wanted to look at, which is that we got a cool visual, a poster that came out for DBTO2. So DBTO2 had a poster and the visual looks like this. So here we actually see arts for some of the units. So basically, it's pretty obvious that these are support for the start deck. So as we know, the booster set supports all 10 existing ride lines, so the ones from the start decks, the 5 from DBTO1, and then introduces 2 new ones. So I've seen people crying like, you need to support Eugene, you need to support Orphis, like what are you guys doing, how can you ignore them? Like, they said they will, so you know, hold on tight, right? So of course in this visual we see that it's basically a Bruce support, first things first, then it looks like a Seraph Snow support, then we can see that that third card has no shield, and it is pretty obvious that it's Keter and is, you know, probably a support for Bastion. And then finally the Magnolia support also looks very, very nice. So art-wise, they look cool, they fit the deck that they're in so far, and they are definitely, you know, nice to see. We don't really have any other information so far, so that's kind of it. There's also been a couple cards that showed up on the lore website, so I think one of them is referencing, like I haven't read read the lore website yet. I'm going to sit down and do it at some point, but one of them looks like this, and this is sort of like a Phantom Blaster Dragon, kind of like, it was used in the same chapter that talked about Phantom Blaster Dragon, so that's why I'm kind of like talking about it like that. So it looks cool. It's a nice little like horse dragon dark thing. And then the other card they showed looks like a grown-up Nemain. So she's not Nemain though. She could be Nemain's daughter, you know, because elves live a really long time, so maybe 3,000 years isn't that much for them. But she is kind of like the narrator of the chapter, I think. So yeah, pretty cool, looks good, so definitely pretty exciting. And then finally the Monster Strike card. So we already know that Monster Strike has a toolbox in terms of the monster box that basically lets them just, you know, swap out cards every turn. It's not technically a plus outside of the 10 roll because it's just a swap. It doesn't actually like add advantage to your hand, so you know, we saw that as a gimmick and it was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But then they showed the true Sacred Sword of Bonds Excalibur. So this card, I'll actually pop up its effect here in a bit. I actually started playing Monster Strike a little bit so I could actually see what the characters are like. Excalibur is really busted in that game. Like inside the actual gacha game, that card is busted. Not that card, that monster is busted. But honestly, this card, it's okay. The skills are Vanguard Circle. During the battle he attacked, he gets plus 10k power. Just like that. For existing 23, I think that's pretty good. Like the fact that you have to do nothing to gain that 10k is nice. It feels kind of like the sort of meme. Actually no, I'll get to it later. The second skill here is when he attacks a Vanguard, if you Persona Road this turn, count plus 1, discard 1, and choose a rear guard and stand it. So they basically took not Eugene's, they took Bastion's skill, added a counterblast to it, and not having to rely on checking grade 3s. It's fine, depends how much this deck counterblasts, but overall, like having 4 attacks obviously is really good. This is really in line with like Bastion levels of power, I would say, and so it depends what else the deck has, you know, if it has like plussing, if it has like early rush and like aggro and stuff like that. You know, the trade-off for Bastion is that it doesn't do much until turn 3 outside of like a top deck call and a draw, and so because of that, you know, the faster decks can kind of try to beat it before it gets going. We'll see if that's the case with Excalibur, right? But this is the first of the trial deck bosses, and you know, the first trial deck is meant to be like sort of the easy to play, easy to pick up, even if you never played Vanguard, so it's definitely in line with that. Now, the second Monster Strike card that they revealed is a little bit of a, you know, its own story, let's say, which is Laplace, Demon of Causality. So she has 2 skills. First one is when she attacks a Vanguard while being boosted, you can count plus 1 and soul blast 1 to choose 3 of your opponent's rear guards and retire them. Then her second skill is Vanguard Circle Act. If you Persona Road this turn, you discard 1, choose an opponent's Vanguard, and its power is reduced to 0 until end of turn. Basically a Zeal effect, sort of. So this card has been really getting a lot of people kind of riled up. A lot of people have been talking about it in the community as well. I personally like the second skill quite a lot because it is well restricted and it's a Zeal effect. Like putting an opponent to 0 when it's not like locked to 0, you know, like with Valios, is fine in my opinion because they take 1 defensive, they go to 10, it's fine, right? It's actually less bad than Zeal, and discard 1 for that, for a skill that doesn't actually plus you in that sense, is a pretty well designed skill. For me, it's that first one that's, you know, I think a lot of people have pointed out, generally in Vanguard, when there's a retire skill or a draw skill, it's 1 for 1, right? Count plus 1 for draw 1, or like, you know, count plus 1 for retire 1, or soul blast 1, you know, etc. But this is soul blast 1, count plus 1, which is 2 things for retire 3, which seems slightly off, right? It seems slightly off. It's just feels a little bit too much in that sense, and this is a trial deck boss as well. Now, you know, sure, it doesn't plus you, but it pops the opponent's stuff, which is in a way still a plus, especially for that low of a cost. And Monster Strike's own mechanic of the, you know, 10 pull gacha once per game is also a +3. So they do plus in the deck, and, you know, Persona right or not, this is a pretty nasty effect. You can look at the matchups already, right? Of course, some decks won't care about it as much, right? You know, there's Fossado, apparently Fossado now, who dodges that in Keter. You know, there are Dark States decks that end on like a 2-card board, 1-card board that, you know, they don't really get affected by that retire either. But then, you know, there's things like Brankgate, where I guess Counterblast Soul Blast 1 to pop like all of Orphis tokens for them to have to Counterblast 2 next turn to respawn them. Sure, it's not much effort for Orphis, but it's still like cost-wise a little bit weird. And there are definitely matchups like Magnolia that will suffer very hard from this, especially when, like, in the past, I don't know, like, even Eugene didn't pop this punch. Like, it would have made sense for Eugene to maybe have this kind of effect, but even he was like, rest 2, pop 1, and that's kind of it. And then you have to connect other effects to pop more cards on top of that, and they still weren't as cheap as Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, so I think that part is a little bit concerning, and I think a lot of people wish it was a little bit more expensive. Maybe like Almost One, Almost One Discard One would have been a bit better, especially Discard One really feels like it balances it out. Hopefully this card is the exception though, because you mean like Excalibur feels pretty like in line with the rest of the D series card design, so I hope that she is the exception. Some people also kind of say the logic of like, oh, Monster Strike won't be supported in the future, so they have to make it a bit better so it lasts for longer, but that doesn't really make sense either, because you like look at Token Rambo, right? It's not there to creep the game, it's there for Token Rambo fans to have fun, and this is supposed to be for Monster Strike fans to have fun, and it's not supposed to like do much to the game in that sense. So I really hope that that's kind of the case here, and overall, as long as the rest of the card pool is balanced, that's obviously fine. It's just her that kind of set off a lot of people's like V series triggers, basically, of just like, ooh, oh no, you know, so a lot of people are still pretty like sensitive to that, myself included, so obviously like that reaction makes sense. I also really hope that like the second overdress booster set is a lot more, you know, in line with what the first booster set was. Just add some consistency tools or like other options for deck building, but don't creep the cards, right? Everyone is looking at booster set 2 with like, you know, excitement, because we hope that it's just a good support set rather than like power creeping what's in set 1. Obviously we don't know anything yet for set 2 outside of some visuals, but a lot of people are hoping that it's a tame set that is still exciting, you want to buy and like buy some cards that upgrade your deck, but you know, they kind of patch up the weaknesses of the decks rather than like push them into, you know, skybound levels. So I think that's the kind of like worry that kind of triggered some people, and you know, myself included. I kind of looked at this and I was like, really? Almost One, Soul Plus One for pop 3? Doesn't that seem a bit too excessive? But again, here's hoping that it is the exception rather than the trend. So yeah, I guess we'll see. That'll be interesting. These cards also have max rarity versions like the SSRs. They'll reveal the other arts for these tomorrow, so that will look pretty cool too. On top of that, they also showed really cool like leather deck boxes for Token Rambo, also these really nice play mats, and also these really cool plastic deck boxes as well. So there's some nice merch coming for Token Rambo in July and August. But that's about it. Next Wednesday, we have the big Bushiroad TCG presentation, so we're going to find out a lot in that one. So no news video next Tuesday, because I'll try to put whatever is important there into the Wednesday one. If it's just Token Rambo, then sorry, might not put it in, but you know, we'll see what happens next week. We'll see what they reveal over this week as well. There weren't really any big reveals during this Daibangasai, so guess that's that. Anyway though, that's gonna be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you as always for watching and chilling and vibing, and so I'll catch you guys with more videos out this week. I have a lot of overdress content in the making, and so I need to just sit down and work on a lot of it, and sadly these kind of videos take up the time that I would spend on those videos, but it is what it is. I still want to relay the information to you guys. But anyway, that's gonna be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.